Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. My name is Rich, and I'm the host of this show. Tonight, it's going to be me and regular co-host Ed Gobo, the owner of Captain Hank's Tackle. Ed, welcome. Good to see you.
What's up? Another Monday night. I'm excited to talk to Dave tonight.
So am I. We have Bayside Dave coming on tonight, and one of the more popular streams that we've done was last year when we were talking about the surf fishing and in the fall specifically. And Dave has been gracious enough to come back and talk to us again. So I guess we didn't offend him too much. Want to get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way up front, though, because it may be a little odd situation tonight. So we have Ed in the middle of a huge thunderstorm right now. So we either may lose him or you may hear thunder in the background. He said he's going to try to work his mute when he can. I have a neighbor who's fixing his truck, which is very loud. So we'll see if that comes through the walls of the house. It tends to. But we'll try to work the mute buttons as we can. But Ed, what have you been up to this past week?
Not a whole lot. Went fishing, caught a bunch of cow nose rays on, that was Wednesday. And then just been cranking out jigs and trying to clean up the mess. As you can see, I kind of changed some stuff up. Yep. So getting a little bit more organized and just keeping busy.
That's great. I had no fishing this weekend. So it's the first weekend in a while that I haven't been out on the water. It's my son's graduation party. That was a lot of fun. I'm still tired from it. That was Saturday night. There was no way I was going to hit the water on Sunday after that. Just way too late of a night.
We're going tired. Out this Sunday, right?
The plan is this Sunday that we're going to try to get out there. We got to get Billy Ackerman into the water. Actually, he just showed up in the chat. So we got to get Billy out on the water in his new kayak. And there are a couple other people that want to go out as well. So we may have a group to go out. And I'm thinking maybe we move a little north, change up the scenery a little bit. So let's just say hi to the people that are in the chat. Again, these are not all the people watching, but the people that have chatted so far. We have Bill D, a member of the channel. Hello, Bill. We have James Flynn. We have Billy Ackerman in there. We have a bunch of other people that have not chatted at this point. Although I am seeing Roadkill. I feel fishy. Will we finally get a weekend without a south wind? I am actually... I'm not even looking at the wind forecast yet because I'm concerned that it's going to be a south wind and I don't want to see it. It's bringing, I got the reports, when we were out there for that tournament, it was up into the mid 70s. And I got a couple of reports from people from this past weekend saying it was 58 degrees on the incoming. So I don't know. That's not what I'm looking for. Hopefully we can get some east winds or something like that. But maybe that's something we could talk to Dave about. The effect of the wind on the water temperatures and the fishing in the surf, but Dave's going to come on in just a moment, and we're going to go through that. And this is really geared towards people that don't go surf fishing a lot, like me, or people that are going down and you want to spend the day on the beach. Maybe you're not a surf fisherman, but you want to spend the day on the beach with your family, but you want to also throw a line out there and have a decent chance of being successful in the summer. And the summer is not the easiest of times, I think. So it's good that Dave's going to come on. And I'm going to bring him on in just 1 second. I do want to mention that last week I did ask everyone, not for subscribes or members or anything like that, but for people to go on the podcast and give a review and a rating, because that really helps us to draw more guests. We got some pretty big guests coming up soon. And some of the people that I've talked to in the past have said, when you're a little bit bigger, get some more reviews and get some more traction on the podcast, and I'll be on, which I totally understand. And we did get a bunch of ratings and reviews. So I want to thank everybody. I did publish one from last week from Pipeline 6789. Gave the 5-star, always a great podcast. Always a lot of great knowledge and tips for the Northeast fishermen. Never miss a show. Keep up the great work, guys. Really appreciate that, Pipeline, and anybody else, if you could jump on Apple and give us a review. And just so you know, if you like this stream, it's pretty much exactly what goes on the podcast. So you don't have to actually listen to it on the podcast to review it. It's actually a little bit cleaned up on the podcast. I tend to do some audio editing, but it's pretty much the same thing. So again, thank you everyone in the chats. We got Rob, Heaven and L, 609 Fishing.
Well, I'm thinking of it here. I'm gonna drop something in on you, Rich. So between now and let's say the end of the month, whoever leaves a review on the podcast, I'm going to take all those guys, put all our names in a hat, and I'll throw out a Captain Hank's gift pack or something.
Ah, that would be awesome. I'll throw something in there too. We'll have to think about it.
You can do whatever you want, but
okay, you do your thing, and then next week I'll come up with something.
There you go.
All right. Without further ado, we need to bring on Bayside Dave because this is the time of the season that we really need to talk about surf fishing. Dave, welcome back to the stream. It is great to see you.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I am too. There are certain people that we love having come back on time after time. And we had talked last year, and the hope was that we were going to fish that one tournament with you, the American Angler Tournament. And that didn't work out because I think the date changed or something conflicted with it. Well, I know something conflicted with it. I don't recall exactly what it was. And we weren't able to make it down. But, man, I'm a big fan of you and your page. So if you want to let everybody know where to find you, typically on Facebook, now's a good time to do that.
Yeah, I have a Facebook group that I started a few years ago. It's basically all general surf fishing information. But it's more geared towards Long Beach Island surf fishing reports. And it's on Facebook. It's called Surf Fishing LBI with Bayside Dave. And I've made a very clean Facebook group where there's only surf fishing information posted on that group. I monitor all the posts. I monitor all the chats, all the comments. So it's not like your typical page where you're going to have stuff that, people throw jokes out, people throw funny stuff out, people looking to sell a boat or, all that sort of thing. You can count on getting only surf fishing information when you go on my Facebook group.
It's a great group. I'm a member. I don't surf fish LBI often. Maybe only about once a year on average over the past 4 years, maybe twice, a couple of times. So not often, but I am a member and I actually go in and just read through it. It is a great group. You do a really good job curating it. You got good people in there.
Yeah. Even though I only allow fishing reports from Long Beach Island, it's general surf fishing information can be used all up and down the Eastern Seaboard because it's all the same type of fishing. We talk about, people ask questions about reading the water, about what kind of fish are out there, what kind of baits are you using, what kind of, any kind of surf fishing information is always relatable to every area. Just because it says LBI doesn't mean it's only LBI stuff going on in there. I only allow LBI fishing reports on there.
Right.
No boat stuff, but it's all, like I said, it's all just general surf fishing information. There's a lot of questions being answered. I got close to 4,000 members, and when you ask a question, it's not that you're asking Bayside Dave a question. You're putting a question out there, and you got 4,000 guys, a lot of experienced fishermen. And we have a lot of regulars that are always answering questions and giving tips and tricks and everything. It's working out really well. People really love the page.
It's one of the groups that I don't post a lot in there, but I go in there probably once a day, twice a day. On the weekends, probably more. But yeah, it's a great group. So let's kick this off. And so now we're getting to the point where it's hot weather. I don't know that the water temperatures are doing everything that we want, but no. We're down at the beach now. People are down at the beach and they want to toss the line out. What are the before we get into the gear and everything like that, what are the species right now that are going to be the best to be targeting from the New Jersey surf?
Well, right now, the easiest species to be targeting is what's in the water as all the time, almost every day. You have your fluke and you have your kingfish. Every now and then you have little pods of bluefish that'll swim by, and on the chance that a striped bass might come through and grab something. But you're not going to go out there targeting bluefish. You're not going to go out there targeting striped bass and be very successful doing that. if you're going to spend the day on the beach or just a few hours on the beach, if you're going to go out by yourself and maybe walk the beach, look for some fluke, you can guarantee that if you're out there for a few days, you're going to hook up with some nice fluke. If you're sitting on the beach with some people, you don't want to move around, you just want to throw a line in, go for the kingfish. Kingfish are so easy to catch. There's no limit on them. They're very good eating. You can bring home a dozen of them and impress your friends with, look at all the fish I just caught. They catch themselves basically. Put little bloodworms on, put little fish bites on these little hooks, toss them in, stick it in your rod holder, loosen up the drag, and just hang out. When the rod is going like this, the fish is caught. You know, it's the simplest fishing that you can do, and it's a very leisurely type of fishing that you can do where you're just hanging out with your buddies and, oh, hey, by the way, your rod's jerk. All right, all right, we got to, you know, it's that simple, and that's what you're targeting. You're targeting fluke and you're targeting kingfish all summer for sure.
So let's start off then and talk about kingfish. I love kingfish, and you're right, it is fairly easy to catch them. They taste really good, and I do like to keep kingfish, even though cleaning a dozen of them is not my favorite, but it makes some really good meals out of those. So let's talk about that first, and let's go into the gear that you're going to be recommending for kingfish fishing specifically.
Well, kingfish, you don't really need very heavy rods, but you don't necessarily have to worry that, oh my God, I have a 10-foot rod, this is going to be too much, because you're basically going to throw a rig that has a sinker on it, and it all depends on what the water's doing as to how heavy of a sinker you want to put on. I always tell people, you know, use a pyramid sinker, you use a frog tongue, something that'll hold the sand, something that'll hold the rig in place. I generally recommend like an 8-foot rod, and you can go with a 10-footer, but go with a light, something that throws light, something that doesn't throw up to like, you know, any heavier than like a 6-ounce sinker, because you know you're not really throwing a lot of heavy stuff. You're probably generally going to start out from like a 2 or a 4-ounce sinker. For me, especially when I'm bait fishing, I don't worry about, well, the lighter the better. You know, I'll just start out with a 4-ounce or a 6-ounce. I shouldn't say 6-ounce for kingfish, but I would just generally throw like a 3 or 4-ounce sinker for kingfish. You'll say, oh, that's kind of heavy, but you don't want it to move anyway. So what's the big deal? You know, right. Start with a 3 or 4-ouncer, you know, 8-foot rod, bring a spike with you, unless you want to just hang on to the rod yourself. That's fine. It all depends on, you know, how active you want to be with your equipment. And basically kingfish rigs, you know, I use these are 2-hook rigs. You can get 3-hook rigs. They have 2 dropper loops. They have like a number 8 or a number 6 J hook on here. Pretty small hooks. They have pretty small mouths on them. And at the very end, and then I have my I put a bank sinker on this, but I like to tell people to use pyramid sinkers. But the bank sinker works just as fine, because sometimes, you know, if the fish isn't biting, you don't feel any fish biting for about 10 or 15 minutes, then just turn your reel a few turns, and the bank sinker will just drag across and reset itself. And as far as bait is concerned, bloodworms are best, man. And you don't need the whole bloodworm. 1-inch pieces. Cut little 1-inch pieces of bloodworm, and you thread them on. You take the end of the bloodworm and you stick the hook point right down the center of the worm, and you push it onto the hook. Let it turn its way up onto the shaft, and just before the other end of the worm gets through to the end there, just poke it through the side of the worm, pop it through the barb, and that'll hold the worm onto the hook. Some guys like to hold the worm on with what we call, you know, fish bites. We call them fish bites because that's what they're named.
Right.
They're fish bites. These are a natural product. They're made from fish parts, and they're put on a strip. It's a very lightweight mesh that they use, and they come on these. They make these strips. They look like bubble gum. They make this is a red one or a pink one. They make green. There's a couple different colors and all that. It's the same thing. Little 1-inch pieces. That's all you need, and just pop them on the hook. Some guys like to use this to hold the worm on. I don't generally need to do that. It all depends on the water. If you got heavy water pulling your baits off, pop a little piece of fish bite on the end there. That'll help hold the worm on. Now these have a little mesh on them. These feel solid when you cut them. I usually just cut them with a scissor, or you can just pull them off like that, and you got a little 1-inch piece, and just click them onto the end of the hook here, and they'll start softening up in the water. And but the mesh that they are installed on or made on will actually hold them on the hook really good. After about 15 or 20 minutes, if you don't get any bites, that's when you want to change your bait out. I always leave baits in for about 15 or 20 minutes tops. And even these fish bites start to deplete. They start to get really soft and they start to pull off and go off into the water. And you'll end up with your just little piece of mesh on the end of your hook. And they're not easy to pull off. So that's why just grab a pair of pliers and you yank them off and they'll pull right off. Always try to get bloodworms, the best bait for sure. Keep fish bites on you. I've gone out to the surf with nothing but fish bites and caught plenty of kingfish. It's a very good product. It's always something to fall back on. You run out of bloodworms, you got your fish bites, you're not going home. You can keep
fish bites are great.
Yeah. And like I said, always change out your baits. Check your baits every 15 or 20 minutes when you're surf fishing, for sure. And that's the deal, you throw it in there, out to where the sandbar is, where the sandbar, not to the top of the sandbar, of course, right where the sandbar runs into the bottom of the trough there. That's where you want to kind of land your bait, tighten up your line, don't pull the sinker back out of the sand, just get your slack tightened up a little bit. And that way you can feel when the fish is on. You'll see the end of the rod go. A lot of times people aren't really experienced surf fishing where they look at their rod and it'll dip down. It'll dip down. Is that a fish? Is that a fish? No, that's the water. That's the surf. That's the waves. That's going to make your rod dip down. You'll know when a fish is on. That sucker's going to start shaking. And it's not going to stop shaking. That's a fish. Reel it in. You don't have to set hooks hard on a kingfish.
Right.
Just tighten up the slack and start reeling, and that fish is on. It's so easy to catch.
I'll say that I actually primarily use the fish bites when I'm going for kingfish. I haven't now. I won't say that I haven't seen a difference, but I haven't had an unproductive day using fish bites next to somebody who's also catching on bloodworms. But I will say bloodworms are better.
Yeah, for sure. You have that scent, you have the blood in the water that really attracts them pretty hardcore, but they are hunting and looking for something to eat. So when they see something, they see that little pink thing or the little green thing that you have floating there, they're going to go at it and see what the heck is that. And because it's a natural bait, fish bites, they're going to go at it and they're going to grab it. And like I said, kingfish catch themselves. You got your line tight. You don't have to loosen up your drag like you're going to have a 10 or 15 pound striped bass. Grab your line and pull your rod into the surf and it's gone. Kingfish are about a pound and a half. They're not going to pull your rod into the surf. Leave that line tight. Just a little. Obviously, leave some drag on in case a striped bass does grab it. Because I actually caught a 32-inch striper on a kingfish rig. So loosen up your drag, but you don't have to have it so loose. And that tension will help hook that fish.
Yeah, I would say I have caught a striper, not a 32-incher, but I have been surprised by striper and a bluefish on fish bites in the surf. And it is a surprise. Even a small brown shark, which I can't believe I ever got it in. I mean, it was really small, but still, I somehow got it in, and it was on one of those. It was on one of those prepackaged kingfish things, which the leader must be 10-pound leader at the most.
Yeah.
And somehow it didn't catch a tooth.
Well, when I fish for big fish, a lot of times I'm using small baits and smaller hooks. I find when big fish are in the surf, they're nosing around in the sand, looking for sand fleas, looking for calicos, looking for the sand eels. That's all small baits. Right. So if you have small baits out there with small hooks, I'm not saying that's the only way to catch big fish, but I've caught a lot of big fish on 4-0 hooks with just small pieces of bunker, small pieces of clam, even sand fleas. And speaking of sand fleas, if you have them in the surf and you have a lot of little ones, kingfish love little sand fleas. That's the mole crabs. Those little bugs that you see in the surf. Pop a couple on. You have 2 or 3 hooks on your rig. You have a fish bite or a bloodworm on one, and you see some fish. You see some I'm sorry. You see some sand fleas, just pop a small one on the hook. Guaranteed you're going to catch one.
Well, that's one of the best. It's one of the best baits. It's like shrimp. Shrimp and sand fleas are like the two bottom of the food pyramid.
Yeah. Almost every
baits.
fish that I catch in the surf, from 1 pound kingfish to 30-pound striped bass, have sand fleas in their belly.
Yes. Yes.
Now let me ask you, Dave. Do you keep the kingfish? Do you eat them and prepare them yourself?
Oh yeah, of course, sure.
So,
There's a lot of small ones I'll throw back, but generally, anything 10 inches or bigger are definitely keepable. The thing about the kingfish are, even though they're long and thin fish, if you look at them, they're pretty round, and they have some nice fillets on either side of them. You get a 10 or 12-inch kingfish, get a couple of those things. That's going to two or three fish is going to feed a person very, very healthy. You catch 13, 14-inch kingfish, or even a 15 or 16, which is very rare in these northern waters, but they're there. It's amazing how a couple inches will really grow. The girth of the fish really grows. I mean, you get a lot more meat out of a 14-inch fish than you do out of a 12-inch fish. It's amazing. Very good eating fish.
Yeah, they're my kid's favorite. We go down to the beach in Brigantine all the time and catch them. But the fish bites are king, man, because like if I get off work, I can just throw the rods in the truck and go, and I don't have to worry about getting bloodworms and this and that. The fish bites are the way to go.
Yeah, I tell you, don't feel bad if you can't find bloodworms. And like you said, Ed, if you don't have bloodworms on, you're just going to come home from work. On your way home from work, package of fish bites in with all your gear, man. You're catching fish.
Yep.
I keep a package in my truck, and I have a second package that's always in my my drive for my kayak, because it's just one of those things. They just really, really work. Now we're talking again the ones that you showed, the strips. I'm not talking about the other fish bite.
Right.
Oh, the
other
Fight
things.
Club. They're like,
right.
Like
but Dave, L had a question. Are bloodworms easy to find at this time of year? Where are you finding them?
Because of the fact that there are kingfish in the surf, most tackle shops will stock bloodworms. You can buy them by the half dozen or the dozen. They're up around $15 a dozen. You don't have to worry about getting the jumbos. As long as you're getting bloodworms, like I said, you're only cutting 1-inch pieces. You don't need the jumbo bloods. That's for other types of fishing. And that's for the bigger fish in the spring or in the fall. Call around to your local bait shops. Most of them are carrying bloodworms for sure.
Yeah, I saw a few over the past couple of weeks that posting online. There was one I was watching. They were just restocking them as they were going through a video. So yeah, they're out there. L, if you go and look for them, they're not front and center right now necessarily. It's typically the killies that are front and center in the squid strips for the fluke. But I haven't had any issue finding them. Now I haven't bought any. I still go for the fish bites. Right. Nothing worse than having bloodworms die and the smell that makes. And with my habit of leaving stuff in my truck, that I would have to sell the truck.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, you don't want to leave any kind of bait in your truck.
Especially not bloodworms.
Just burn it and collect the insurance.
Bloodworms, you can keep bloodworms for a couple weeks. I put mine in a little in like a plastic container, like a Tupperware. I line the bottom of it with a couple of with some paper towels, and the bloodworms come in that little
the grass,
greenery grass or whatever. And you just throw that in the container, clip the top on, and throw it in the fridge. Every day, I open it up and I flip it over. I take the paper towel out and put a new paper towel in, because that gets some blood on it, gets some slime on it. That can make those fish, make those worms, start getting sick or whatever. Just change out that paper towel every day. I've had bloodworms in the fridge for 2 weeks and still able to use them when doing that. Just change a paper towel out every day.
Well, $15 a dozen, I would definitely be doing that.
Yeah.
I think 609 Joe has a video on freezing them too.
I did a video on. Did I do a video? I did a post. I have a post on my group about how to keep bloodworms, salting them. and freezing them. Yeah.
I'll have to try it.
Yeah, if you know I'm not going to be back for another month, and these suckers are going to die, you can preserve them by salting them and freezing them. And there's a way to do it. You don't just salt bloodworms while they're wiggling around, because they'll just blow out all the blood. You got to throw them in the freezer for like 15 minutes, kind of shock them up a little bit, and then you salt them, and then you pack them up. Yeah, you can keep them alive for a couple of weeks by just changing out the paper towel every day.
And did you say you did a video on that?
I didn't do a video. I was mistaken. I have a post that's in my group. I'm going to pin it. I don't have it pinned yet, but if you search my group for how to preserve bloodworms, I have a pretty extensive post about how to do that properly.
Okay, that I'm going to look for that, definitely.
Yeah,
there's certain baits that I'll just throw back. I don't care. But
yeah,
bloodworms is not. I don't want to do it with bloodworms.
Yeah, there's a lot of times if I have bait, bunker or clam or whatever, and I'm leaving the beach and there's just a couple pieces left, I just whatever.
Yeah, feed the seagulls. So for technique, you're just throwing it out there. You're looking for the trough next to the shallow. Basically, you're looking for where all the fish are going to be congregating in those types of areas, right?
Yeah, kingfish are always moving around in schools. They're either running along the bar, they're running in the center of the trough, or they're even running close to the beach. Sometimes when the tide is low, they're on the ocean side of the sandbar, and you want to get over that bar and drop it on the other side. You might have to wade out to get out that far. And if you want to know where these sandbars are and you have trouble reading the beach as to what the waves are doing, go down at low tide. It's obvious where the sandbars are. Before you go down to the beach line, before you go down to the water line, as you get onto the beach, it all depends on what type of beach you have. Some beaches, like here on Long Beach Island and North, you go over a set of dunes and then it'll drop down into the beach and you walk out. Now, before you walk out, you're up on top of these dunes. You can just stand there for about 5 or 10 minutes and just watch the waves come in. Look at the color of the water. Look at where the foam is forming. Look at where the foam is not forming, where it's nice and clean, where the water's darker. As the waves break out onto the sandbars, you're going to see where the sandbar starts, where the sandbar ends, where the hole starts, where the next sandbar starts. And then between the sandbar and the beach is the trough of water. Sometimes you get along the trough of water where it won't go back out into a hole. All of a sudden, the sandbar will work its way into the beach and create a shoal where it's just shallow water all the way up to the beach. And you can spot all that stuff, especially at low tide. And even if you think you're going to be going down at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, look at the tide time. Maybe go down there at 6 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning at low tide and just scope it out and pick out your spot. That way, when you get your family or your friends or whatever, if you're just going to hang out on the beach and fish for kingfish, I already went down to the beach this morning. I know where we're going to hang out. We're right along this sandbar area. You don't want to be in those shallows, and you don't necessarily want to be in that deep hole between the sandbars. You want to be in that trough. That's where the fish come in running, looking for food. I'm not saying they're not in that hole there, but generally kingfish are always running along sandbars, running along troughs. My first cast is always out to where the sandbar is, obviously not on top of the sandbar, but where you imagine where the sandbar drops down. And the sandbar drops pretty much straight down. So If you drop it in front of the sandbar there and just let it hang, tighten up your line, let it sit there for a while, give it about 5 or 10 minutes, and you're not getting any bites, give it about 3 or 4 turns. Bring it away from the sandbar. Get it into the trough a little more. Let it hang out there for 5 or 10 minutes. If you're not getting any bites, do it again. Turn in. You'll find them. And like I said, you want to change out your baits every 20 minutes. All right, I did a couple of moves. I didn't get any bites yet. Change out your baits. Drop it right where you had it last. Maybe pull it in a little bit. Maybe go back out again. Maybe they are out there and they just didn't run out there yet. They're not there. They're going to be running along the sandbar, but they just weren't there yet. Even though you were out there already and you didn't get any bites, they might not have come in yet. So always keep changing where you're going to drop your baits, and you'll find them, because when the kingfish are in the surf, as long as you're out there with your baits, you're going to catch them. And sometimes when kingfish are running and they're in big schools, if you have a 2-hook rig, you're going to catch 2 at a time. You have a 3-hook rig, you're going to catch 3 at a time. And that's a lot of fun, taking pictures of that. You know,
Right.
when you pull in 2 or 3 fish and the kids are running over. Oh, Daddy, look at this! This is great. You know, it's a thrill. You know, for those kids, and you know, it's just a lot of fun.
I agree. I'll mention before we move on to fluke. I want to mention one thing about scoping out the water from the top of the dunes, and this is something that I had a friend who way back in the day, and we would go down. He would always stand up there and look, but he never seemed to get in the right spots. And it turned out after the entire summer went by, we both lived down there in the summer. It turned out that the reason that he was in the wrong spot is that he forgot to adjust where he was when the tide moved. So he was thinking of it like, oh, the trough is like 10 feet in front of the water. Well, the water just came up 60 feet. So he's fishing the, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So he needed to use the landmarks on shore. So like line it up with the rock on the jetty
sure.
or, or
Yeah.
something like that. So he was actually fishing the shallows for quite a while.
Oh, that's not good. Well, there's
It
another.
was funny though, because he was so angry
Yeah.
about
Well,
not.
there's another quick trick. If you're staying there and you're looking at the waves breaking, you're just like, I just can't see it, man. Go down to the water line and look perpendicular up the beach, and you'll see how high the waves come up on the beach. You'll see some of the water comes up higher in one area than other areas. That's because when waves hit sandbars, it kills their energy, and by the time they hit the beach, they can't flow up on the beach as high. Now, in between the sandbars are the holes that we call it, the deep parts, the deep water. As the water comes in, there's no sandbar breaking the energy of that wave, so that wave ends up coming up higher on the beach. So when you look down perpendicular on the beach and you see an area where the water is coming up a lot higher, that's in between the sandbars. That's the hole. And as the water comes down and then starts to get lower towards the water where it runs up, that's where your sandbar and your trough is. So the main thing you're looking for is how high the water comes up on the beach, that you know that's the hole, that's not the trough, that's not the sandbar. And then just work your way towards where the water gets shallow, you know, runs up not as high. That's where you know you're in front of a sandbar and in the trough area. So that's almost a sure way to find of the structure on the beach.
I think a lot of people overthink it, you know, on how to read the water. They'll stand there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they're like, I don't see anything. Well, you do. You're just over analyzing it. It's not that hard once you see it. It's like those pictures where you used to have to see the 3D pictures.
Yeah.
Once you see it once, you can do it every time. You can see it again. But sometimes it just takes you a minute to realize, oh wait, this is what the rip looks like. This is what the trough looks like. So I mean, as you said, I think going down at low tide is by far the best thing to do. Just keep in mind, if you go down at low tide today, don't expect it to be the same when you go back in September. You need to do it, you know, within close proximity.
I tell you, in a week or two's time, it changes. You know, you'll have a nice hole on 19th Street, and then all of a sudden it's on 17th Street. And you know, 19th Street is a big shallow now. The ocean just plays with the sand and moves it around, especially when we got rough seas. It just changes all the time, and that's why you always want to check that out. And like I said before, if you feel that you've read the water properly, that you know where the hole is, and you know where the trough is, and you set yourself up. I mean, I do this still today. I'll be down there knowing I'm in front of the sandbar and I'm in front of the opening and all this blah blah blah. And after about 20 minutes, half hour, I'll be looking around. I'll be like, I should be that way about 50 yards, because after you're down there, you're acclimating yourself to the surroundings, and you're really, the waves are coming in. The waves have been coming in for 15, 20 minutes, and you're starting to read it even better. You're starting to feel where you are. You're starting to realize, well, by the way I looked at it from the dune and by the way I looked at it from looking up the beach, I thought I was in the right spot, but now I realize I'm not. Make your move.
Right.
You know,
don't be lazy when you're on the beach.
No, because you want to find fish.
Exactly. So let's move on to a little bit about there's a comment in there, couple comments. One that I do want to mention is kingfish heads make good shark bait. Kingfish heads make excellent shark bait if you really want to catch it. They're, I mean, everything.
I save them.
Like spot.
I save them in the freezer for striped bass. When I fillet kingfish, I save all the heads.
May as well. It's the same thing as spot. Spot is great for striped bass. It's great for fluke.
Yep.
Kingfish heads are they're like spot. I mean, you catch them the same way too, by the way.
And
If you
I find the dogfish aren't grabbing the kingfish heads. They like grabbing meat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know brown sharks love kingfish.
Okay.
I know that. I
Nope.
don't know about. I don't remember catching dogfish on them.
Nope. I'm not saying you won't, but for the most part, I get a lot less dogfish when I'm using kingfish heads.
Well, that right there is some good information to to keep in mind. Then
Don't tell anybody. This is my secret.
We'll keep it quiet.
No, it's really it's starting to get to be a really well known thing. You're catching kingfish, fillet them, cut the head, save the heads, throw them in a Ziploc and throw them in the freezer, man. In the fall when the stripers come, hook them up, baby. They're good.
All right, so I'll be doing that. I definitely want to get down there and get some kingfish this year. Again, I want to get them because I love the taste of them.
Yeah.
They're one of my favorite fish, and it's one of the fish that I target the least, mainly because I'm now primarily fishing from a kayak, but I'm going to get out there and do it. But let's talk about what is my favorite summer fish to catch, and another great target, and a lot of people don't think it is, but fluke from the surf. This is the time of year for it, right?
It's my bag, man. I love it. I fish all year long. I catch all kinds of fish from March until December into January. I live for fluke season, baby. I just love it. I just love the hunt. I love looking for them. I love finding them. I just love it's very cerebral thing fishing for fluke. You got to look for them, you got to find them, and you got to catch them. And that whole challenge, I just love it. I love it so much.
Now, what gear are you using from the surf for the fluke?
Well, because I'm out on the beach for a good few hours when I'm fluke fishing, and when you go fluke fishing, put a few hours aside, because it's not. Don't get me wrong, it's not frustrating, but it takes time, and you got to put your time in. Use a lightweight rod, 7 foot or 8 foot at the most. I recommend an 8 foot rod for most people. Get a rod that's like a medium to fast action. It's all written on all the rods, what type of rod it is. It'll say medium action, fast action. Get a medium to fast action rod. Get a rod. Rods are always marked as to how much weight they throw. Get one that throws in the vicinity of 1/2 ounce to 2 ounce, 5/8 to 3 ounce, no bigger. And as far as a reel is concerned, whatever brand you buy, get around they're all generally have the same number for the sizes: a 3,000, 3,500, or a 4,000. That's about as big as you want. No bigger, no smaller. You don't want anything too small. You don't want anything too big. You're going to be out on the surf for a few hours. You don't want to, after a couple hours, be like, man, it's starting to get on my arm here, man. It's got some weight to it. But and 20-pound test braided line. I recommend the braided line when you're casting, when you're throwing lures for any kind of surf fishing. Braided line is very pliable. It's not like mono. It's going to hold its shape, because if you've ever fished with mono and you're throwing lures, it kind of wants to hold that coil that that happens when it's in the reel, and it doesn't peel out easy. It takes a while for mono to get used to being straight. Braid just comes out and it straightens out, and it's a nice lightweight line. You can get a lot of distance out of it, and because it's got such a tight braid to it, it's strong. As small as it is, it's very strong, and you can feel every little tap with it, and it's very important to put braided line on your reel when you're fishing for fluke, for sure.
So you're essentially using the same setup that I am. The only difference is I use a 7/6 rod, and
and
it's actually it's the same stuff that I use in the kayak and in the backwaters, and for what I would consider light out front, little deeper water, but not the real deep stuff, not the real deep wrecks, but 3,000 reel, definitely. I'm using 15-pound braid or 10-pound braid. only because I just don't have 20 pound on any of my rods. So
Yeah.
I have 30, 15, and 10. And then the leader that I'm going to use in the surf is going to be lighter because there's less structure in the surf than when I'm kayak fishing. So there's less to break off on.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you know, I'm not catching 15, 20 pound fluke in the back, even though I'm using 20 pound leader. It's because of the rocks and the, you know, everything else that I'm fishing around. So we're on the same page. And I do want to stress your point about getting something that's light and something that you can use all day and just keep tossing is absolutely critical when you're surf fishing, because if you're not used to it, you're going to feel it in your elbow and your shoulder, and you're going to feel it in your lower back. And hauling a 10-foot rod for fluke just doesn't make any sense.
No,
doesn't
not at
make
all.
any sense at all. And I would say using the really light jig heads. I think Andrew had just posted that in the chat. He's using up to a 1 ounce for most, and trying to go lighter than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't go any heavier than 1 ounce. I'm generally, if I'm using bucktails, 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce. If I'm using a chicken rig or a high low is what they call it, I just put a 1 ounce sinker on the bottom of it, and that's it. If I need a heavier sinker, I'll use 1.5 ounces. I don't even go 2 ounce. That's all you need. That's all you need. You don't have to toss out to England. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of times the fluke are right there, right in the wash. When you're retrieving, nice slow retrieve, little jerk every now and then, get a little twitch going. Not every turn, maybe every 2 or 3 turns, just give a little twitch as slow as you possibly can turn, that you are connected with your line. It's not going slack and it's moving, and you get a little twitch every now and then. Bring it all the way in to the surf, because if you get to be where, well, it's close enough, I want to cast out again, and you're reeling really quick, you just took it right over the top of about 5 heads.
Right.
A lot of times they're right in the wash there. Or people don't realize fluke will follow their bait. You'll toss it out by the sandbar, drop it down, and start jigging your way in. You could have 2 fluke just following it in all the way in without even touching it. Right. And all of a sudden they'll see the surf and they'll be like, oh shit, there goes our meal. Boom. And they hit. And you'll say, wow, they keep hitting in close. I'm not going to toss out far. No. Always toss out unless you know for a fact that they're right there. They'll follow their way all the way in and bring it right into the wash before you lift your line back out, because a lot of times that's where you're getting your hits.
So tell me, if you're the same as me, how cool is it when you catch a fish behind a guy that's fishing near you, and you're just they're out to their chest, hauling it out there, and just standing there getting pounded, and you're standing there ankle deep water, and you're casting behind them, and you're catching you're catching fluke behind them.
There are times when I'll cast perpendicular to the beach and just fish the wash.
Yes,
because I know that's where they are, and I don't know what spot they're in, but I know that's where they are. And even at a lower tide where I have a good trough, or a good deep trough, and it's a low enough tide that there's a shallow area of shoal that I can walk out on, maybe ankle deep, maybe shin deep, that'll take me out to the sandbar. I'll walk that shoal and I'll just cast perpendicular to the beach and just hit every line of that trough and see where those fluke are laying. And a lot of times it's right in the last break, right before the beach.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, and this is one species where what you know about them in the backwaters and offshore absolutely still applies to the surf. They are still going to behave the same way. They're ambush predators. They're going to look for the change, and they're going to look for structure, and it's going to be a drop off in there. It's going to be a ledge in there. Wash is a structure. It gives them a place to camouflage themselves and hide, so they will feed in the wash. Now, I wouldn't say that's your first place to go, right?
No,
they will go up in there, but they're not typically just going to sit there.
No.
But working the structure, it's the same thing as in the back. Find where the current is. If there's a rip current going through there, you're going to get the current that goes around the sandbars, not as much over top of them, but around them and down into the trough. So it's really working that kind of stuff. So to your point, there's a lot of thinking that goes into it, which to me it makes it more fun. It's more of a hunt. Unlike the kingfish. The kingfish you hunt a little bit, but eventually they're going to come by if they're there.
And when I'm standing in a spot on the beach, I'm not just casting straight ahead. I'll do 3 or 4 this way, and then I'll go to my left a little bit, and then go further to my left a little bit. Then I'll come sweep across. I'll start casting this way and this way. As far as I can cast, wherever my rigs are dropping, I'm probably covering about 50 or 60 yards, 20 or 30 yards on either side of me. I'm using that whole area. I'm fishing that whole area. I'm not just fishing a slot in front of me. And even when you're retrieving, you're in one spot, so you eventually keep only fishing a small spot in front of you right off the beach, even though you're casting out far and that far cast is covering this whole area. If you're not catching any fish, don't necessarily move down to where, as far as you cast left, move down as far enough so when you cast far right, you're going to start in that spot. Go down about 20 yards where you're in the center, where you're right center on as far as you cast left, and start casting straight out left and right again, because now you're covering all the ground that you missed coming in on the angle, if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And people do that all the time. I used to do that all the time. And I think the only reason I stopped doing it was by accident. It's because I got older and I got tired of walking, 6 miles on the beach. So I take more time and I take 5 steps, 10 steps, and I do, less casts, but you cover more water that way too.
Yeah, for sure. And, you talk about structure, and you talk about bars, and you talk about deep water and troughs and all that stuff. One day you'll be catching fish. They're all laying out by the bar. The next day, and in a deep water, the next day you go down there, and all of a sudden you're not catching the deep water anymore. And you'd be like, what about that shallow stretch that comes right up to the beach? Right now there's about knee deep in water there, and it's about 30 yards wide, and there's kind of waves all churning across all that. It's about waist deep, maybe not even waist deep, knee deep. I tell you, throw in there. I've caught some big fluke just laying in a foot and a half of water, 2 feet of water. You got to try it all. You got to try everything, and you never know where they're going to pop up. And like I said, I keep talking about, in the troughs in front of the sandbars. You're in front of a big hole. Throw it in there, man. Sometimes they just made their way in and they haven't gone into the trough yet. They could be all laying there just kind of searching around and being like, oh, where am I? I haven't, oh, here's some food, and oh, it's got a hook on it. Oh, I'm caught. No, just try it all. Just try it all. You can never tell where they're going to be.
So go ahead, Ed.
Fishy. I feel fishy has a question about the movement of fluke. What do you think, Dave? Do they move offshore in July and then move back in later, or are they still just there?
From what I believe, the fluke will come in and they head into the bay. The bay holds warm water before the surf holds warm water, because the bays are shallower. The bays are in the sun, and they go into the bays. And early in the season, I love fishing the bays, off the sod banks, off the jetties, where the inlets are, stuff like that. As the water starts to warm up in the surf, they don't necessarily go into the bay. They start lining up in the surf. Come the end of July, all the fish that are in the bays start making their way out to the beach, making their way out to the ocean. So they, instead of going all the way out to the ocean, they might just turn and start lining up on the surf again, which is kind of what's happening now. We had a long stretch for a while. Early in the season, we were catching some pretty decent fish off the surf because we had water warm up early. And then we had about 10 days of southwest winds that just chilled the hell out of the water, and fluke fishing died out off the surf, and it moved into the bays. We're still battling with having the water warm up in the surf, because as the water warms up, the northeast winds come, the east winds come, and the sun is baking on the water, and it starts bringing the water temperatures up. The fluke starts showing up in the surf again. All of a sudden, we had some more south winds coming. This, you guys see it. It's been happening again. It just happened this weekend. I had guys out in the surf on Saturday. They couldn't even stand in their bare feet. The surf was so cold, and they weren't catching any fish.
Yep.
As far as fluke moving in and then moving out and then moving back in again, I'm really not that much of an expert on that. I just know what I see in the surf at the times, in fluke season. As long as the water is in the mid 60s up into the mid 70s, you're going to find them in the surf. You're going to find them in the bays. You're going to find them in around the islands and stuff like that. So as far as the movement of the fluke are concerned, I'm really not that familiar with the fluke in that way to really answer that question properly.
I can chime in a little
Gotcha.
bit. I can chime in a little bit on that. I've done a lot of fluke research. So here's everything that I have learned and experienced with the fluke. So they're going to come in the spring, early spring, way before the season starts. The fluke are there. They're moving in. They're just not incredibly active if the water's really cold. About now, they are moving offshore, but they're not all moving offshore. So a lot of people say, well, I won't even fish the back. It's not worth it after, a certain date. It's usually around now, mid-July. And because all the fluke moved offshore. Well, a lot moved offshore, but you're still going to be catching, if you know where to catch the fluke, and not just the numbers of fluke, but the bigger fluke, the real size ones, in New Jersey, the overslats, the over 18s, you're still going to be able to catch them all the way through September. And if the season were open later, you'd be able to catch them well into October, early November. They're still going to be back there. So, did most of the biomass move out, or did a lot of it move out? Yeah, a lot of it has moved out offshore, or it will be moving out offshore soon as the water temperatures rise. But I've had my most productive month as being August in the backwaters. And I believe Dan Mancari, who does a lot of sod bank and surf fluke as well, he catches them all the way through the summer, and he doesn't slow down. I don't think he ever slows down when he's fishing from shore. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I've totally answered it, but I think I've answered the concern of does it turn off, and do you have to stop targeting them? The answer is no. They're still going to be there in sufficient enough numbers for every one of us watching this stream, listening to this podcast, so on and so forth, to go out there and have productive days with limits in every time we go out.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking about the cold water keeps coming in, and that turns off the bite a lot. And
Yeah.
but the fluke are still there. Last week we were out, and it was an outgoing tide. We got down there at high tide, and I caught a couple shorts right away, and then nothing. And I fished all the way down to low tide. As soon as the low tide turned around, I started catching keepers. I guess as the water went out and it got shallower and the sun was out, it kind of warmed up the water a little bit and woke the fish up a little bit. So even though you're saying, wow, we had all this south wind and the water got cold and all that stuff, is it worth going out fishing for fluke? Go around an hour before low tide when the water level is low and the sun is out and it's warming up the water. The fluke are there. They're just not feeding in the cold water. And when the water warmed up, like I said, where the shallower water was, I got a couple nice keepers, even though I didn't catch fish for like 2 or 3 hours. I know you see my posts all the time. Boy, Dave, you're killing it. Well, I only post the successful days. I don't just walk down to the beach and catch fluke, man.
Right.
I mean, I go down there sometimes 4 or 5 hours and catch like three shorts and then just go home and be like, well, it didn't happen today,
Yeah, I think that's, everybody always thinks that, people on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, they're catching every single time. You may be catching, but it's not, a lot of it is not worth showing.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I'll show like a bad day, and people seem to appreciate it and like to make fun of me for it, because bad days do happen to everybody.
Yeah.
No matter what. But yeah, they're there though. They are definitely there. And low tide also helps out because not only does it heat the water, but you get the fish in a more predictable area. There's less surface area that they can be in. So if there's a trough there and that's now the only deep thing and it's only 3 feet deep, well, they're going to sit there rather than 3 inches all around it.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, because I've done that on the beach already where I'm out with some guys, and they're fishing for kingfish, and it got real shallow in a big long stretch of beach. And then I look down about 2 or 3 blocks, and I see a nice little hole over there. I'm like, I'll be right back. And I walk down there, and boom, I come up over a 22-incher. All right, we're gonna have lunch now. You know, you're right. It sometimes it's even better to go down there at low tide.
It can get very predictable at that time. That's why, you know, I always say I like outgoing, but I love it when it's lower because it's just less area that you have to worry about. You know, half of fishing is figuring out where not to fish. If you can figure out where not to fish, you're in good shape. And when you can't fish because it's dry or it's only 2 inches, that helps. That just helps.
And I found most of the fish that I fish for off the surf, people are always like, well, what's the best tide? Do you like coming off a high? Do you like coming off a low? I tell you, man, I've caught fish in every tide stage.
Yeah.
Every type of fish in every tide stage. You know, I find as long as the water's moving. But last year, I caught my personal best striped bass at dead low at 8:30 in the morning on a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
And it was about maybe 20 yards off the surf, 48-inch striper. This thing was almost 40 pounds.
Now, was it a topwater lure?
It was a piece of salted clam. And people, I got to get fresh clam. I got to get fresh clam.
That's the second best thing, because if it had been a topwater, then you would have hit every myth and debunked every single one. They don't hit topwater after the sun comes up.
Oh, you kidding me?
Well, that's what everybody always says, because they don't like looking in the sun. But
last fall, that's all I was using in the middle of the day was topwater, and they were killing. I was killing it.
Yeah.
So I mean, fish are looking for food, and
absolutely,
if a topwater plug is the only food that they can see, they're going to grab it.
So now, Dave, I have to put this question up to show you. This is from Roadkill. So let me just qualify why this question is there. I have talked about how great night fishing is for fluke, and Roadkill doesn't believe me. So just looking for your opinion. Well, first of all, do you fish at night?
Not for fluke. Shame on me, because I have friends that will, and they do, and they are successful. Yeah. For they like to have some kind of a noise maker or a glow. You could throw like a little rattle trap out, anything that has a little shake to it. I know my one buddy, he likes to put an SP minnow on dropper loop above a sinker to hold it down there and draw it in, and he catches fluke at night using SP minnows on a dropper loop.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different. See, what I say, and now I'm not talking surf fishing. When I fish for fluke at night, it's in the backwaters, and I use lights. So I don't use glow anything.
Okay.
I'll just use pink zooms. I'll use gulps, paddle tails, anything like that. But it's different in the surf because you do not have good light out in the surf anywhere.
No.
Even hotels behind you and street lights behind you, it's not enough to really make a difference. So that's where I would suggest exactly what your friends are doing. Go for something that's going to make the noise, it's going to push some water, and it's going to draw the attention.
Yeah, because they're there. They don't go to bed, you know.
No,
they just hang out, you know, and wait till they can see something. And if they see or hear something, they're going to grab it. Exactly.
Roadkill says he trusts me, but he's just checking another opinion.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never gone out at night for fluke.
It's for me. I don't know that I would do it in the surf, but mainly because it would be so different from the way that I'm used to doing it. I just love bridges. I love docks. Anything that's lit up and has distinct shadow lines is where I want to look for those fluke. Right. And they'll sit ahead of the shadow line and behind it. So, you know, bridges are just a great place to go. Now, if you are going to do it and you have some light, I would try at night around jetties. If you could go down the side of jetties and look for especially the little holes and the little structure that they have around those I would think could work. But I'm not a surf caster for fluke at night kind of guy. I just have never done it.
I mean, I'm so successful in the early mornings and during the day. I have no reason to venture out at night for fluke.
Right.
Fishing. Night fishing for me is for big fish.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
I tell you, for striped bass, I'll go out at 9, 10 o'clock at night and stay out till 2, 3 in the morning. When it is pitch black out, it's on. That's when they're feeding, man. But we're not talking about striped bass fishing right now.
Right. Well, we'll talk about them come fall again, because we're gonna try to pull you back in there. We got your guys, Jersey Boys, Outdoors. They're in here.
Yeah.
They're in the chat right now saying hi to you.
Oh, hey guys.
Yeah. If any of
I
the,
see them.
I think most people that watch this or listen to this podcast know who Jersey Boys Outdoors are. If you don't, you should look them up on YouTube.
Yeah, they do a great weekly report. It's basically, just showing people who's catching what where, and it's a great thing to follow because it just keeps the information out there as to where they can go to become successful and catch fish. And they did a great thing pulling me last year to do a video on doing the basics and surf fishing for striped bass. Using circle hooks and baits and all that stuff, and we just did one a couple weeks ago for fluke, and they're just a great channel for information. Definitely look up Jersey Boys Outdoors for sure.
It's really well done too. I've watched both of the. Well, I've watched a lot of their stuff, but I have particularly watched those too. The one that they did with you last fall, I think it was the one that really. It was just so well done. I was like,
well, they're very professional. They show up with a bunch of cameras. They clip a mic on me, and we go over the itinerary. We're going to do this first. We're going to do that first, and boom, boom, boom. And I don't know if anybody watched the fluke one that I did a couple weeks ago with those guys. Yeah. It was all in one take. I mean, we did it in 3 or 4 sections. We didn't go over it. We just talked about it, and then we just did it. All right, boom. All right, let's move to the next one. All in one take. That's how these guys not only are professional, but they're good at guiding me with the information that I want to give, right? In an interview style that really makes me feel relaxed and comfortable enough to talk and just get all the information out there. That we did it all in one take. It was beautiful.
Yeah, they're good at that. It's so anybody who hasn't checked them out. Actually, there's a bunch of people in the chat tonight you should be checking out. 609 Fishing. Again, you guys are probably already familiar with these. I think my channel is the smallest of all of them, but check out Jersey Boys 609. Check out Heaven and Elle on Instagram, Heaven and Elle Outdoors. She's always got good stuff out there. But yeah, so before we go, we're over an hour now. Are there any things that you want to share that we haven't covered for the people that want to get out there and get on these fish at this point?
Well, we talked about the equipment to go out for fluke. We didn't really talk about baits. Generally, when you go to your bait and tackle shops, you obviously want to get a fluke rig. You want to get gulp. Gulp is the best thing to fish for fluke with. This is a swimming mullet. This is a 5-inch swimming mullet. It's on a 6-hoe bait holder hook. There's different sizes. You got 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch swimming mullets. These are grubs. This is the pink shine grub. This is the premier bait for fluke for the past few years. 4-inch and 5-inch pink shine grubs, baby. Oh my God, you put these on your hooks, you're catching fluke. So there's 2 types of rigs. My go-to rig is a chicken rig or a high-low rig. I have a sinker on the one end, and I have a dropper loop with a hook up about a foot and a half, and about a foot and a half above that is another dropper loop. So it's a 2-hook rig with a sinker on the bottom. I use a 1-ounce sinker, and I pop gulp on the hooks. Some of the fluke rigs that you find in the shops will have a little bit of a teaser on it, bucktail, or a little bit of a shiner, spinner, whatever. Those are just as fine. But you want to put like a gulp on there, and talk to your bait shop owners, the people who work there, get their recommendations as to what gulps to use, or even like you were saying, the squid strips.
Yep.
are great to use. They're good to enhance. This is the other rig that's good to use. You got the bucktail on the bottom, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce. This is a 1 ounce bucktail. That's on a closed non-slip loop on the bottom, and then about a foot and a half above. This is a rig that I bought out of one of the bait shops. This is from Top Notch Tackle. Top Notch Tackle makes one of the best rigs for all types of fishing, but this is the one that I got from them. This has the bucktail on the bottom. This has the teaser up top. He ties all his rigs. Emmett ties all his own rigs. He ties all his own bucktails. I highly recommend getting Top Notch Tackle rigs if you're going to fish for almost anything, but especially for fluke. So that's the 2 types of rigs. I mainly use this high-low chicken rig with the 2 hooks on it. I love using that because I have 2 baits up high, and if you have anything in the bottom in the sand that a bucktail might keep gathering, you don't have to worry about that. The sinker will just bounce through all that. And the next one I use, like I said, I got the bucktail bottom and the teaser up top. And always enhance your hooks with either a gulp or a squid strip or something that has some movement to it.
Yeah, even a sand flea
Sand
calico.
fleas, I put sand fleas on hooks. The other day, you were talking about Tommy Venom, Thomas Monaco, buddy of mine that we go fishing a lot. He was out fishing with gulp for about an hour and a half, and he kept seeing sand fleas at his feet. So he popped one of the gulps off, popped sand fleas on, and for an hour he was catching fish with sand. They were just hitting the sand fleas.
Yeah.
So very versatile bait, those sand fleas, man. Put them on the hook, give them a shot. If you see them in the surf, use them.
Yeah, I use them for fluke all the time, even in the backwaters. It's just, somebody had mentioned it before. They're just like, they're candy.
It's candy pretty much every fish eats them. Every fish eats them. And like I said, cast out, slow retrieve, cast out, let your rig sink to the bottom, tighten up your line, and just very slow. And every couple, give it a little jerk, very slow. If you're thinking going too slow, slow down even more. Like right. as long as you keep your tension on and it's moving. And when you start feeling a bite, don't jerk it. You start feeling a bite, stop moving. Keep the tension, even if you're just turning a tiny bit, just to keep the tension. Keep shaking that thing. Keep it right in that fish's face. Let it grab it. Let it grab it again. Let it grab it again. You pull that thing to try to set that hook. It might have only had the tail, the gulp in its mouth. You just pulled it out of its mouth, and now it's 5 feet away, and the fish will turn away. Keep that right in that fish's face, and keep working that fish and get that thing to grab that thing, grab that bait, and make sure just keep giving it a couple testers. Pull on your tension. You'll feel if that fish is on that hook, and then set that hook, and now you got it. Always have to feel to see what the fish is doing. Just because you feel a little bump doesn't mean it's got the hook in its mouth yet. Give it some time, and you probably do the same thing off the kayaks. You're not going to yank that thing out of its mouth right away. Give it the chance. Get that thing to get another grab and get that hook in its mouth.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, some days, you want to slam it right away, but actually in the last video that I put out, we were going through a whole day, and you just had to sit and literally just wait. And I am not that guy that wants to wait when I know or I suspect there's a fish on the end, but couldn't hook anything over slot unless you really waited, you pulled it off the bottom, and you waited for it to get sick of being off the bottom and try to reclaim the bottom. Then you could set the hook. I do want to add in there though, if you're using the bucktails, and so I'm going to use Ed's Captain Hank's bucktails, but I would suggest one also really good bait, and you can catch them the same way that you catch the kingfish, is the live spot. A live spot on a bucktail, dragging that very slowly across the bottom, a 3/4 ounce. 3/4 ounce, they can't really move very much when they're trying to swim because it essentially weighs as much as, almost as much as they do.
You're putting live spot on a bucktail?
Yes.
That's
putting
awesome.
it right through the nostrils.
I was going to say right through the jaw and to the nose.
So either through the nostrils, if I'm going to be working it off the bottom, but in the surf, I would actually put it bottom of the jaw through the top, or just through the top of the jaw and through the nose. So it can keep moving it, opening its mouth and everything, but just a very slow drag of that through there.
Very interesting.
It's a good way to, if you wanted to get only big fish, because it takes a big fish to down a whole spot. But in that case, just like you said, you wait, because it's got to get that whole fish down before the hook is even in its mouth.
Yeah.
but you'll know.
That's why I was talking about doing that tester where you're not setting, you're just pulling tension and see if that fish is on. You know,
Yep.
you might be right. That first bump, he might have the hook in his mouth, and you might want to set it right away. That's what the test pull is for. That's just, just pull that tension. You're not jerking it, because if it's not in its mouth and you do the jerk, then it's gone. But if you do the tension, then you'll know. Oh, it's on. Now you set it. It's those tester pulls that really help.
And the big difference is between the backwater, where I can swing a little bit more freely, is I'm vertically swinging. So if I miss it, I drop it right
You're
back
still
down
on top
its
of
head.
the fish. Yeah.
If you do that, if you do that in the surf, you're clearing 6-8 yards. It's not coming. It's not coming 20 feet after.
No, now you got to retrieve and cast again. And hopefully it's still there.
Yeah. And it's not going to be the same one. Everyone likes to think that, oh, I missed that fish and Ed picked it up right behind me. He picked up my fish. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
He picked up one of the other 83 fish that were down there.
Exactly.
So
that's funny.
Yeah. So those are just some things that I would add in there. Andrew saying live peanut bunker, small snapper on a bucktail definitely will work as well. Peanut bunker,
they're so hard to keep alive.
They're so hard to keep alive, but if you can get some, the key that I always had with peanut bunker is, I should say the challenge is, you get them in a cast net, but you don't want to get the school. Like, you feel terrible if you actually get the school. You want to get like the couple on the edge, because they die so fast. So, throw it out, hope that you only get like 2 or 3.
Right.
Put them on the bucktails and go. They're so easy to get though when they're swimming. But
yeah. Do you ever use killies out there?
Oh yeah.
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 I was out a few times with Tommy and his dad, and they were calling me Dead Stick Dave. I would throw a killie on and put it in the rod holder, and then work my bucktail, my gulps, and then the rod would go off in the holder, and pull up a nice fish, and Dead Stick Dave got another one.
That, you know what? That's fine. I actually, in tournaments that allow more than one rod, I will always dead stick one.
Yeah.
And I will dead stick it with something live on it. 100%. Why not? It catches
works.
fish.
Yeah, it works. It works.
I don't need to work a live bait. It's working itself.
I have many monikers, but now they call me Dead Stick Dave off of Dennis's boat.
No, that's okay.
I love it. It's all fun.
Yeah.
If I get nicknames for catching fish, thank you very much.
That's what I was going to say. It's a good nickname, because you're putting meat on the deck, whether you're keeping it or not. You're bringing it up. So
I love it all, man. I just love it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Dave, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
You're definitely one of the favorites of the people that we've had on. And I've gotten a bunch of slack from people saying, why haven't you brought him back on? And actually, I was going to reach out to you a few weeks ago, and I said, hey, I want to reach out to you soon. And then you did that video. I was like, well, we'll give him a little bit of a break.
Damn it. They got to him first.
They got to you first, but
yeah.
And it was a really good video. So, and as they had mentioned earlier, Jersey Boys had mentioned, it's all about you. When you know your stuff, so it's kind of like set up the topic and get out of the way.
I know the basics, you know, and that's all you need to know to get out there and have fun.
Exactly. So thank you again, everyone. That's going to do it for tonight. We're working on a guest for next week. We're going to announce it later in the week, but I'm hoping to get out there this week. Dave, I know you're going to be out there. You and Tommy are going to be just bailing fish. I hope.
Yeah, and Ed, Rich and Ed. I mean, hopefully we can get together, the three of us, maybe get you up here on LBI and show you some stuff.
Absolutely, but I want to come out of there with a nickname.
You'll come out.
It might not be one you like, though.
Something will happen, and we'll say, there's lost another one, Rich.
Yeah, that could. Well. As long as I don't have a net in my hand, I usually don't lose the fish. If I'm trying to net my own fish, it is an absolute shit show.
That's part of the reason why I bought GoPros.
Yeah.
Well, the coolest thing that happened when I was working with the Jersey Boys, I was fishing with my Century, my 7'10" rod, which is a super lightweight, super expensive custom rod that I use for fluke fishing. And Craig wanted to try my rod, so second cast, we're just talking about how lightweight it was and how great it is. Boom, he catches a fluke. It was his first fluke off the surf ever.
Wow.
Just testing my rod out. And I was like, I just loved it. It was so
that's
cool.
awesome.
And we got it on film, and you'll see in the end of the video, he'll be like, well, here's a chance to show you how to handle the fish. He was still shaking from catching the thing. It was so fun.
There's nothing better than being on the water with somebody who catches the species for the first time. You know, I went out with a guy a couple of years ago who had never caught a striped bass, and he's like, I'm tagging along with you until I catch one. And he got into it, man. His smile was crazy, and he got multiple.
Doesn't that make you almost feel better than if you caught it you know what I mean? Like when you take someone out and they catch for the first time. I tell you, I was more charged up watching him reel that fish in than I get when I reel my own fish in.
It's great, and I like the feedback from people that say, hey, you helped. I say it on the streams, and I think people that actually fish with me in the tournaments will totally back this up. I'm not out there to win any of these. I'm just out there hoping that somebody I know does really good and catches them. I just love seeing people catching fish. I'm celebrating people that are next to me catching fish that I've never met before. It's just great. I was out with Joe Billups when he caught his first sheep's head. It was a really nice one too. I have no credit to claim on that. I was just with him. I didn't teach him anything.
Right.
But that was awesome. That was awesome. I mean, the cheer that he put out there, he was hooting and hollering, and everybody around him was celebrating with him. It was great.
I tell you, the passion for fishing is addictive, man. It's just wonderful.
It absolutely is. So, all right. Ed, you have any final words you want to say?
No, this is a great show. I'm going to be probably putting some of these tips to work this week.
Well, I hope to see you guys on the beach in Long Beach Island someday. Someday soon.
Yeah, well, I'm 100% going to be coming down, Dave. I do want to get out fishing with you, and I go out in the kayak a lot, but that's not my only thing. So
awesome.
Definitely going to be heading down there to go out there. And I haven't fished LBI yet this year, and I do fish it at least once every year. I usually average about one or two, but I haven't got my one in yet.
Let me know. I'm here every day.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I just got to tell both you guys, thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure coming on your show. You guys are just as professional as the next guys, and if not even more. And I just feel very comfortable talking with you guys, and it's just a real pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We'll announce the guest later in this week. So until next week, until next episode, get out there, get on the water, get some tight lines.